Mindy Odlin and Stacy Collins.
We all want to grow our movement, but without a healthy core, growth can actually be debilitating. So, how do you know when is the time to scale and to grow? I'm Mindy Odlin, and here with
Stacy Collins.
Hi, Stacy. Good to see you.
So
In this
good to see you.
episode, we explore ways to identify new leaders and to mentor them for success.
And I'll share my experience as the small group program leader here at Unity of Houston and how to identify, train, and support the growth of those new leaders to help work together to bring our mission to life.
I love it. And before we get into today's content, I just want to jump in with a great big heartfelt thank you to the fabulous ministries who are sharing their love and support to help make these programs possible. So big shout out and thank you to Unity Church of Northeast Tarrant County in Grapevine, Texas.
Woo!
Thank you for your tithe this month, and to Unity Spiritual Center in Fruitland Park, Florida. Thank you for your financial contributions to this program and to Spirit Groups. And I also just want to say thank you to everyone who is an ongoing contributor through our Patreon community. That is at patreon.com/spirit groups. And just a special shout out to a few of our ongoing monthly supporters. Shout out to Riverside CSL in Riverside, California, and to Unity Community of Central Oregon and Unity Church of Portland, Oregon. Thank you, everybody. We are here because of your love and support, and that support is helping us bring this message to New Thought churches, New Thought leaders all around the world. Exciting, yeah?
Yes,
Love it.
so exciting.
Love it. So last week we discussed milestones and benchmarks and how to know if your organization's mission is accomplished, or better yet, expressed. Is your mission being expressed? And Stacy and I just had a fun romp through the world of numbers and metrics. So Stacy, what reflections do you have as you think back on where we've been in the past week?
Oh, that was a fun romp, wasn't it? And my main takeaway, I think, from last week, or one of my main takeaways, was that the numbers really are our friends. Sometimes we might not want to look at them. It feels like, oh, do I dare peek in there? But if we can just kind of not identify ourselves with them, just let them tell the story, we can see how the numbers reflect and where we're putting a lot of energy in and might not be getting the numbers we want. And maybe certain things aren't all about the numbers, but if they tell a vital story for the growth of our ministries. They're
I
friends.
love that. Yeah, so we don't have to resist them or judge them, but they can be a great tool. And as I was thinking back on last week, what came to mind was this metaphor. I was thinking about it sort of in the context of, we're shifting into this mission-driven approach to growing a ministry, and that mission is really like the goalpost. It's like, this is what we're aiming for. This is what we're here to do. And it made me think of, it's kind of like if you were to tell a group of people, it's like, hey, we're playing this game. And the goal is to get the ball to the other side of the field. So we're saying this is the mission and this is what we're aiming to do together. But if you don't have a rule book or a playbook, or you don't have any way of measuring, you got to get 10 yards to get a first down, or, this is how the field is laid out, and you don't have any boundaries or any parameters. You're just like, hey, do what you want to do. We're all trying to get to the end zone. Do what you want to do. It's not a real game. It's not something that can build a sense of team. It's not something that helps you develop your skills. It's just a bunch of people doing whatever they want to do. And, and that's fine if you're playing a small game. I think about children running around on a playground. That's kind of what it would look like, is you could have a good time. But in terms of growing something and building team and really creating a mature community, it helps to have those things that we measure, because those measurements are giving us the parameters for how we play the game. What is our strategy for how do we get to that end post? So that ties in really well with what we are talking about this week. This week is about, once you have the game plan, once you know the game that you're playing and you know where the end zone is, that's your mission. Here's what we're trying to accomplish together. And that we're going to have people that are going to be on the team. You can say, if you look at football, you got the offensive team, you got the defensive team. So if you're on the offensive team, your goal is to score. So maybe you've got that team that's there to welcome the new people and to reach out to new people and to engage those new people. And they're here to help you, bring in that new first timer, that's an important piece of that team. But there's also the team, as I think about football, because I grew up in Texas. So I know my football. So in football, you have, the defensive team also. And in ministry, what would that be? That's retention. That's member care. That's making sure that once people are part of your community, that there's a lot of things competing for our time and our energy, and there's a lot of opportunities for spiritual growth. So what are the things that you can do to retain those members and to cultivate those members and to make sure that you're fulfilling your mission by challenging them and encouraging their growth and caring about them as they grow? So that's what today is about. Today is about, once you know what the game is, which is what we've been talking about so far, now who are your players? And who's the best player for each team? And what is the goal of the team? And how do you cultivate really great leaders? So this is all part of our engagement strategy process that we've been talking about from the very beginning. This is a 5-step process. I'm going to review the 5 steps and share with you where we are this week. So engagement strategy, as we've been talking about it in this series, is 1, it begins with those explorers, those people who are a good fit for what you're doing, but they just don't know about you yet. So we reach out to those explorers. And then the next step is to engage them. Explore, engage. Engaging them is not only having them come visit your church or your small group or your online service, but sharing their contact information and saying, I want to know more. I want to get involved. So that's the engage step. That's step 2. Step 3 is expand. And that is where, once they've indicated interest, we make sure that we're providing them with the information they need to, what is the core strategy? What's the playbook? What is it that we're here to create? And how do we educate them on what this game is in a way where they can put it into practice? They can get on the field and run some plays. So we have the expand step, which is about expanding their knowledge and understanding of what you're here to do. And then we have the express step, which is not just understanding it, but putting it into practice, getting there on the field and actually making the plays and becoming proficient at being part of your team. And that brings us to the 5th step. Today is the 5th step, which is that encourage step. Encouragers are those who have been through the whole process. They've been new. They have said, I'm interested in learning more. They have signed up for your membership class. They have signed up for a small group. They attend your Sunday service, and they're putting the principles into practice in their life in a way where they can say, this principle shows up in my life in this way, and here's how I am changed. Whatever your mission is, they can say, I am a product of that mission statement. My life has been transformed because of this community. My heart has been opened because of the work that's being done here. So they are a product of the product. And because of that, because they've been through your system, they're the perfect people to guide other people through and to encourage others to follow in their footsteps. The great thing, the exciting thing about step 5 is once you hit step 5, once you can support people through the process to get them into this final stage, this is where you have scalability. This is where you have sustainability. This is where you have growth, because now it's not one minister or a tiny group of us staff trying to make everything happen for everybody. Now you have qualified people who know what you're about, who've been through the process and have experienced your mission, that can join you as co-workers to bring that mission to life, because they've experienced it. So that's what we're going to talk about today. It's going to be so much fun. I can't wait to hear from you, to hear your stories, to hear what's happening in your ministry. So if you have any questions for us or stories to share or ideas that you want to pop out there, Stacey, how can they connect with us?
They can just call us, Mindy. We're at 816-251-3555.
Love it. We would love to hear from you. So first idea for us to chew on today is this. And I've heard this, and I, by the way, everything that I'm sharing with you, I have done the opposite of. So this is what I've learned through years of doing the wrong thing. What I used to think, the mindset that I used to have, the consciousness I used to have is, when we had a leadership position open, we would start looking for leaders. We would start looking for people who we thought had great leadership skills. And what I find in my study of mega churches and successful, thriving churches is they're not in the consciousness of, I'm looking for leaders. They're in the consciousness of, everyone is a potential leader. And what we're here to do is to find and to nurture that leadership seed that is within every person that comes into our community. So it's not about finding new leaders. It's about cultivating and growing leaders. So Stacy, have you had experience with that? I'm sure you have in your work with small groups.
Yes, and it's so amazing. That's really what we did when we first started small groups. The staff members got together, the staff that worked directly with the congregation, and we all just started brainstorming names, people that we saw that were already stepping into leadership in different ways. And it was amazing. We had a lot of us had the same people on the list, but other people, there were people we didn't even know about. And just in that conversation, we found out about a lot of great potential leaders. And as you say, everyone's a potential leader, but people see sparks of people in their own different areas. And it was a really great process to begin our small groups.
I love that. Yeah, that's a great way to begin, especially as you see people who have, natural leadership abilities or charisma, or there's just something about them that makes them stand out. And, when you're first implementing this and making that shift over into a mission-centric strategy, it's awesome to be able to sit down and to identify those people and to personally invite them. We'll talk about that more in just a little bit. What I love is that as your organization begins to have some traction, and once you use this engagement strategy over time, what it essentially does is it builds a pipeline. And I'd love to hear, Stacey, your thoughts on this as well, because I found that sometimes, especially through the small groups, especially through having the opportunity to get to know people in a small circle, in a small setting, sometimes the people who are maybe they're a little bit more quiet, but they're solid. They're always there. They're reliable. Sometimes in those small groups, we're able to identify leadership that we might have missed otherwise, and to cultivate leaders to be able to give them opportunities to step up and see how they do. So what have you seen? What has surprised you in terms of what comes out of your small groups?
Oh, I am constantly surprised. But it's exactly what you just said, that people that you've seen, you've had some interactions with them. They seem like wonderful people, but you don't know much about them. They are a little bit more reserved. And then you're in these small group settings where there's a safe space to share, and they have the time to share, and they feel comfortable enough to start sharing their gifts. And you learn, I didn't know you did this. And they have connections with this nonprofit, and they've done this and they've done that. And all of a sudden, they are coming alive in what they want to share with the group. And then the next thing you know, they're ready to host their own group. Because they've had this opportunity to come alive and say, hey, I can do this. I could be a host of one of these things.
I love it. And that's exactly what cultivating leadership is about. It's about giving people opportunities where they can feel safe, they can go at their own pace, but those gifts that are within people become visible when you have that structure. And that's one of the reasons, one of many, as anyone who's been listening to this show knows, we're all about the small groups, because it does provide the structure for leadership development that doesn't exist. I haven't seen it exist in any other format, other than just, who's the charismatic person that everybody can see, right? So that's the first thing is the goal is not just to find those outgoing, charismatic, natural leaders, but to cultivate leadership at every level. So when people come in, you can identify different skills and gifts that you might have otherwise overlooked. Your engagement strategy, these 5 steps that we've been talking about through this series, are a fabulous way to cultivate that leadership. And when you use this strategy, when you create an engagement strategy based on these 5 things, what it does is it prevents you from doing what I used to do, which is skipping steps. When you find, when that new person comes in and they're like, oh, I run a business, or, oh, I'm a leader of this or that. And everybody starts like getting excited and drooling and saying, oh my gosh, you would be a great board member. You would be a great, we want to put them in charge of everything. because of their natural gifts and their experience. But what happens sometimes is when we skip steps, we end up having people in leadership positions who don't really understand what the organization is about. They don't understand our mission. They don't understand our core teachings. And they also, sometimes it's too much. I had people who would come into our community when we were first getting started and we were hungry for volunteers. If we found the slightest bit of interest, we would just jump up and down and pounce on people. I see this happen a lot with millennials. They walk into a New Thought church and they get pounced on because we want them to lead and like we're so excited to see them, and they run out the back door because it's like, okay, that's too much too fast. So this engagement strategy is really important, that we bring them in as explorers. We give them an opportunity to say, yes, I'd like to learn more. And then we give them the foundations, the foundations of our teaching, the foundations of our history, the foundations of our mission, and then let them put it into practice. And from there, as they start, once we've given to them and they have seen their life transform through their participation, now when we ask them to step into leadership roles that maybe we saw from day one, but now it's time, because now they have been blessed by us first, rather than just seeing what they can give to the organization as a whole. So how do you do that? How do you pace that out so you're not pouncing on people?
Well, I can't say. Sometimes we have to sit on our hands. Everybody gets so excited. I can see myself at the connection team table and our sacred service coordinator locking eyes. Sometimes we calm down.
Take a breath.
But what's so wonderful about the small group, about letting people join a small group when they come in, inviting them into that, is because not only do they get immersed in the teachings and in the community, but then they have this group of friends, this group, a support network, that as they are invited to step into leadership, they have people that they can talk to about that. They have people that have seen them grow and that they are growing with. And so it really gives them a great foundation made up of other community members, for which they kind of feel like they can go dip their toe into some other things. So that's what I've seen happen quite a bit the longer we have our small group program.
I love that. So how do you do all of this? Like, what are the steps? And so I'm going to share with you a few challenges. I'm going to just pop the challenges out there early so you can be thinking about it as we go through this. If you're listening to this in the archives, I encourage you, bring your team together, bring your staff together, bring your board together, and listen to these episodes together. And anytime you want to stop and pause and like, let's talk about this thing. This is one of those episodes where there's going to be some things that would be really helpful to talk about with your team, with your staff, with your board, with your core leaders. So the first thing I would say is, what are the roles that you have in your organization for leadership? What are the leadership opportunities? And Stacy, I think we were talking several episodes ago about, before you had the small group structure that you have now, that there wasn't a lot of volunteer opportunities that were leadership opportunities. I mean, there's always, you can always have like maybe who's in charge of the worship team this Sunday, and then you need a lot of volunteers to fill that. But when you have small groups, suddenly you have this limitless opportunity for people to step into that level of leadership. So, have you found that's opened you up to identifying leaders that you might not have identified otherwise?
Yes, of course. And the other thing is, people have unique gifts to share that may not necessarily fit into a class format, or may not, like you said, they're not called to usher or greet. They want to give something on a slightly more interactive level, maybe a little deeper level, you could even say. And so there are infinite ways that spirit groups can manifest, within book studies, within art classes, within many different modalities you can do within the small groups. So it really, your leaders the cogs start turning. You see, when you start talking to people, I could do that and as a spirit group host. And so it's really created, and as you say, very scalable, because once they're trained and they're immersed in how the structure works, they kind of take it and run, and so it's wonderful.
I love that. So that would be the first question is what are the leadership roles that you have? You have volunteers, but who's your volunteer coordinator? That's the leadership role. You may have small group leaders. The small group leaders are all serving as leaders. So you have the people that are in those groups, and obviously being a part of a small group is a leadership experience in and of itself. We'll talk more about that later. But the people who are leading those groups, that's a leadership role. Your small group program leader is a leadership role. Your whoever you have that's training your youth volunteers, leadership role. So identify what are the leadership roles that you have. What opportunities do you have for those who are ready to step into leadership, so that you don't have people who are ready and willing to serve, and there's just nothing available that would suit them. So that's the first step: is identify what are the roles. It's kind of like if you were building a team. Like you need the linebacker and the quarterback, and like these are the positions that that we need to fill, or that could be filled to support our mission. Second thing is to look at, given these roles, what are the strengths that are required for each of these roles? So what are you looking for in a group leader? What are you looking for in someone who's going to volunteer with your kids? What are you looking for in someone who's going to be welcoming people on Sunday morning? So each of those different positions, each of those different roles is going to, it's going to be a good fit for a certain type of person. So identifying what are the strengths so that you can be clear on that. And then finally, what are the objectives? And this is really, if I'm on the youth and family team, what is my goal? I know I've volunteered when I first started with Unity in Austin. My first volunteer role was as the 3rd and 4th grade Sunday school teacher. And, we had our curriculum, so we kind of had our playbook to know what to do. But what if you really took those volunteers and built a leadership team? I knew my partner, but I didn't know any of the other teachers. So what if you look at your organization much like you would, a team. That's what you're building, is a mission-driven team. And within that team, there are specialty areas that you can cultivate and constantly be working on the leadership development of the people in your organization. So what does leadership development look like at Unity of Houston, Stacy? Like how integrated is that into the culture of what you're doing these days?
Yeah. Pivotal. It was a shift in our leadership cultivating processes, I guess I would say, from my viewpoint, because it went from, we weren't trying to plug a certain hole, if you will. Mm-hmm. We were people that were already, like I said, we identified people that were already ready for leadership, or that we had seen something in, and invited them into it. And then we also let people self-identify, like, yeah, I'm feeling called to this, rather than, oh, we need X amount of this, so let's let everybody know that flashing lights, we need 3 more teachers, and so that's really changed. And I know we'll talk about this a little bit later, and I'm looking forward to this part, because this is where it gets really cool, is that the people that sign up as participants in the groups, I don't even think they might realize that they're stepping into a leadership role. You kind of sneak that in them, but it happens, and their inner leader ends up being revealed.
Yes. Well, what I love about what you've just shared is that is a huge shift in consciousness when we stop looking for leaders to plug holes, and we start creating leadership opportunities to help people in their spiritual development. Because leadership is a natural extension of your spiritual growth. Once you have been blessed by a teaching and you're implementing that teaching, you naturally, this is a Charles Fillmore thing. He's like, once you've been through these first 4 steps, the thing that will happen next is people will naturally want to share it with others. And if we don't have a space for them to be able to connect at that level, what happens a lot of times is they go out and they start a business, or they start coaching, or they do something, and we never see them again because we didn't have a space for them. We didn't have an opportunity for them. So that is an important piece of leadership on a mission-centric level, is providing opportunities for people to step into, not because we need it, but because they need it, because that's part of how we grow and evolve spiritually. So we're going to talk about what that looks like in small groups specifically, and how you can use your small groups to identify talent and to recruit new leaders and to create this leadership development system, to create this training field that is not only bringing your mission to life in a powerful way, but it's doing it in a way where everyone who's participating, everyone who's on the field is being blessed by it. You're living the mission as you are developing those leaders. And I've heard, I forget who said this. This is one of the fundamentalists, one of the greats, and I can't remember who to attribute this quote to, but he said, for most organizations watching, it's a lot like watching a football game where you have thousands of people that are in the stands that need exercise, and you have a few people on the field who need to rest. and it's kind of the same way sometimes. So how do we shift that paradigm and get more people on the field, get more people stepping into leadership? So more on that when we come back in just a moment, right here on The Leading Edge.